All right, folks, welcome to the Undergraduate Research Mentor panel. Super exciting to have you all here. We also know that many of our friends join remotely after an event has happened. So we also want to thank those folks for joining after the event and checking out this amazing panel. Just as a reminder, this event is virtual and it is being recorded, and we encourage all of our attendees to mute themselves for the most optimal experience. The only people that will be not muted are our speakers. If you have questions, feel free to use the chat feature or unmute if invited by a speaker. And just as a friendly reminder, since a lot of our undergraduate research opportunity program scholars, Wilkes scholars, early explorers oftentimes attend these events as part of their requirements, we just want to remind you that you are to fill out the event evaluation form to receive your credit. So don't forget to do that. Thank you all for joining the Office of Undergraduate Research Education Series. The Office of Undergraduate Research, our mission is to facilitate and promote undergraduate student faculty collaborative research and creative works in all disciplines throughout the University of Utah. And so you get to hear from some of our cool faculty who are doing wonderful mentoring. We also want to acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many Indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government and affirm our university's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. I am Dr. Annie Isabel Fukushima. I'm the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies, and I run the Office of Undergraduate Research. Normally, you'd hear Shelley Parker, who's our events manager, doing these parts of the slides. But today, because I'm facilitating, you're hearing more from me, and Shelley's still hanging out. So don't worry, folks. Shelley hasn't gone anywhere. She is with us. We also have wonderful panelists that are joining us today. Super honored to have these folks who are going to tell us a little bit more about how they got involved with research, their mentoring, as well as how students might be able to find them. Our panelists are Dr. Akiko Kamimura, who's Associate Professor of Sociology. We're also joined by Dr. Lauri Linder, who's a Professor of Nursing, Dr. Vandana Ramachandran, who's a Professor of Business, and Dr. Josh Steffen, who's a Associate Professor of Biological Sciences. So we have some really wonderfully disciplinary, diverse folks here to talk about mentoring with all of you. And so without further ado, because I'm not the show, these folks are the show. You want to really hear from them. So I'm going to go ahead and invite each of them to reflect on how did they get involved in research and what kind of research have they been involved in. So we'll go ahead and start with Dr. Linder.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad that you're all here. And I guess some of I have to think a little bit about, how I first became interested in research. And that was probably during my master's degree as I started being exposed to what research entailed. And ultimately, I did pursue a PhD in nursing. I'm a nurse by background, and a lot of my research questions really relate to the care that we provide to our patients. And in working on my PhD, I also have had opportunities to collaborate with other nurse scientists with similar shared interests. And my work really relates around providing symptom management to children, adolescents, and young adults with cancer. That's by being at the bedside all the time. That's part of the really integral role we play as nurses, and I think we have opportunity to do that better. A lot of my work also relates to using digital health technology and creating resources that children and adolescents can use for communicating symptoms.
Thank you. Dr. Ramachandran.
Hi, everyone. Great to see a awesome turnout here. You all chosen the right thing to do by spending this hour here to learn more about research. So I am by training a computer scientist, but I am a professor of business at the business school. And so my journey has been at different places. I'm also partly an economist. So throughout my training undergraduate, I started out in computer science, and then I got really interested in economics. Wanted to apply computer tools, computer software, and computer applications to help businesses. And so in that manner, I kind of stumbled on research, got a PhD, and was absolutely fascinated in trying to understand how technology can change the world around us, especially the business world. And so that's the path that then brought me to Utah to be a professor. So I have been working with undergrad students for a really long time, almost 12 years now at the U. And so I've been involved with both undergrad projects, Europe in its infancy when, many, many years ago. I've also been part of some programs at the business school for undergraduate research, not necessarily at the university level. So I've seen, and also honors thesis projects, especially honors thesis. I've been an advisor for a really long time. So I'm really happy to talk about any of these particular roles if you have questions. I, have mentored students as an individual advisor. I have also been a department advisor, which means I don't specifically work with you on your project, but I guide you in terms of how to select a mentor, what are the different kinds of research available to a business or an economics, finance, marketing, that kind of domain, those kind of areas. So I'm also an advisor. I'm also a research mentor. I'm a thesis mentor. So hopefully I can touch upon a lot of these things today. And feel free to please ask questions.
Thank you. Dr. Steffen.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. Can everybody, well, I guess you can hear me, I guess, all right. So I guess I started doing research as an undergraduate, and I didn't really know what I was doing. It was quite fun. I really recognized how powerful and how much I enjoyed research as a graduate student. And I have done lots of research in a variety of contexts, mostly associated with plants and molecular biology. And as in graduate school, I started working with undergraduates more. I wanted to teach people through doing research. And so over the past 15 years, I've held a variety of positions where I get to do that as my primary job. So I try to work research projects into classes that I teach, and also kind of in my own personal interests. And right now, I'm really fortunate to help manage a program that's designed specifically to engage undergraduates in research and first-year undergraduates. So helping students right when they come to college figure out what research is and if they like it and why it's important. And so and I've mentored lots of students over the last 15 years in a variety of contexts. I think it's a really fun thing to do. So happy to answer more questions about that. And I will say, I work with lots of folks across the College of Science, and research looks like lots of different things. And so especially as a new student, it's hard to understand what research is and why you should do it apart from your coursework. And I think it's a really wonderful way to engage with the things you're learning.
Thank you. And that's a science research initiative, correct?
Yeah, sorry, I should have said it. Yeah, it's called the
Yeah.
Science Research Initiative.
Wonderful. All right, Dr. Kamimura, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about how you got involved in research and what kind of research have you been involved in?
Yeah, sorry so that I turn off the camera because I'm actually sick today, but I'm very excited to be here. So how I started the research was I was very interested in improving health and well-being through the research. Of course, the direct health services are very important, but I thought for me, the research is something I should do. That is actually came from my undergraduate experiences. So I did some like volunteer work, and I actually did some like a global engagement project, and throughout the undergraduate experience, and also I did a senior thesis. I thought the research fits my kind of the interest better than the providing direct services. So that's why I went to graduate school, and I do the health research, including health disparities, social determinants of health, community health, and global health. And I do the both quantitative and qualitative research. And I came to Utah in the 2011, and it looks like I started mentoring undergraduate students almost immediately after I came here.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. We're going to go ahead and keep proceeding with some of our questions, early connections, getting started. So I'm going to ask this cluster of questions and then invite our speakers to answer whatever appeals to them, what they have not heard others already speak about. So how do you first start working with students? How do students find you? When they find mentors like you, what happens? When a student connects with faculty like you, how do they pitch themselves? What makes a student competitively stand out if you have a ton of students interested in working with you? And what are the qualities you're looking for when considering undergraduate researchers to work with you as a mentor, as a mentee? And so the last question is, what do students commonly get wrong when connecting with faculty? I'm going to actually leave the questions up because there are quite a bit of questions. So I'll go ahead and leave them up. Go ahead, Dr. Steffen.
Yeah, so the first part of this question, how do I first start working with students? The program, the SRI I run, is designed to help address that problem because it's really challenging. So for students to first connect with faculty. And so I advertise, and students who are interested in the research I carry out kind of are structurally connected to me via the program. Students, I think I am really excited to work with students who are generally interested and curious. So when student comes talks to me about doing research, I want to make sure they understand what my expectations are and I understand what their expectations are so that we're not misaligned. And so like those initial conversations I have with students are just to make sure, like, do you have the time in your schedule? What is your motivation for doing this? And I can tell them what I can provide. Like, here's what it means to work with me. And those are really important conversations early on to make sure I'm not committing to something that I can't hold up on my end of the bargain, and the student is the same. And I think one of the, try to be quick here, I don't know if I'm over time. One of the things that I would suggest to students wanting to start research is when you're talking to a faculty member, explain what is interesting to you, not necessarily why you need that experience. And so if a student says to me, I need research experience to get into medical school, that's a valid reason, but that doesn't tell me that the student is going to want to engage in that work. And so that's one example of what one recommendation I would give. Yeah.
That's great. The next person I'd like to invite to answer this cluster of questions is Dr. Ramachandran.
Thanks, Josh, for you answered a lot of almost all the questions, so that makes it easier on us. I'll give you a slightly different perspective. In the business school, from what I mean, I've spent a lot of years there. But when students come talk to me first, they usually go to advisors, undergraduate advisors, who then tell the students, if you're interested in research, who's the department advisor. So that's one way in which you can find the department advisors. They're not necessarily going to be the person you end up working with, but like I mentioned earlier, my role as an advisor is to talk about what kinds of research are available in the business and economics areas, and what faculty may be a good choice to work with, those kinds of questions, right? And then if a student decides to work with me as their thesis mentor or undergraduate research mentor, then that's a different relationship. Then you're working with me more closely. So I usually have try to get a meeting first, a face-to-face meeting, whether it's on Zoom or in person, it doesn't matter, but really seeing the face and seeing their excitement and having them explain to me why they want to do the kind of research that they want to do. I've also sensed a lot of times students have ideas. They kind of know what kind of projects or research questions they want to work on. So that is actually an excellent way to start, because if you come to a faculty member and you're completely blank and you have no idea what you want to do, you just want to do research, or you know what the faculty does, but you're not really sure if you're interested in that, that's not really very helpful. I like to hear what ideas students have, what kinds of questions that they're interested in. And, I welcome all kinds of ideas. So we have a lot of empirical work in the business school. We do a lot of secondary data work, which means we're not in a lab collecting actual data, right? Unlike some of the other sciences, secondary data is data that already exists, has been collected for different purposes. So they're research data sets. We then bring those data sets in and we learn techniques to analyze that data to tease out the kinds of answers that you're looking for, right? And we know that secondary data is very noisy. I mean, if somebody else collected this data set, it could be the Fed, it could be, a business organization, could be a consumer level database. And then you're trying to tease something out of that database, there's a lot of bias, there's a lot of noise. So one thing you really have to learn are methods. Dr. Steffen mentioned the question is important, right? Absolutely. I will also add the methods, the techniques are also very important, because you can have a lot of questions, but then you have to understand that there's many different techniques that are involved in different types of research. If it's qualitative, if it's quantitative, if it's analytical, if you're going to do game theory modeling, there's a lot of different techniques like stats, like programming, like mathematical modeling. So it really depends on what your question is and how you want to answer it. We then will work with you to teach you those techniques, those methods, which then are tools that you can use to answer many, many other questions beyond your undergraduate work, right? So that's one of the things I like to tell students about: widen their horizons, tell them about all these possibilities, and still expect them to come up with the research idea, the question, the problem that they're really motivated by.
Thank you. Dr. Kamimura.
So, how do you first start working with students? So there are three kind of sources of the potential students working with me. So one group of the students in my class. So then the second group of the students, they found me on the Europe database. I think that's the what they saw. And the third group is like word of mouth. Their friends were mentored by me, then they wanted to be mentored by me. So those three. Regardless of how they found me, that I talk with each of them to see if they have a good fit. Sometimes their interest is totally not really related to my research area, but sometimes I talk with them anyway to help them to find a mentor who has a better fit. So when they contacted me, unless they are in my class, I don't know about them at all, right? But some of them actually wrote me the very, very short message. They just wrote, "I'm interested in the research. I want to talk with you." That's it. That's not very helpful. And it's a very good idea to introduce yourself in the first email. So otherwise, I talk with the all student who contact me anyway, but it's very, very helpful to introduce yourself when you contact the potential mentor. And so once the students contact me, they're kind of like looking at their quality already started. So like if they reply to email quickly, it's not necessarily in a seconds, but reasonably quickly. And also the for the meeting, if they show up a meeting on time, if they can't show up on time, they should contact me to let me know that they will be late or they need to reschedule. It just if the students don't show up without any communication, that is really the huge red flag. And also that I want to have the potential the mentees have the clear purpose of doing research, and also that it's ideal if they have a clear career goal so that I can make some plan for each student. Some students just said they want to do the research because they are interested in, but if they don't have any purpose or the purpose related to their career goal, I think it's very difficult for me to figure out what the research project would fit for them.
Thank you for that. Dr. Linder.
There, get myself off mute here. A lot of my answers I think are going to complement what our other speakers have shared. And when how do I first start working with students? A couple of different ways. I am one of the honors liaisons here in the College of Nursing, so sometimes students who are already in honors will seek me out, and in my role as honors advisor, I don't necessarily take on everyone as a mentee, but really like to set up appointments to just meet students, learn about their interests, and then I like to facilitate relationships that are going to be successful both for the student and the faculty member involved. And even if it's just if it's a student who's someone within the college hears about and says, oh, I've got this student who came up after class and said she's really interested in research. Can she come talk to you? Absolutely. I'll always make time to talk to someone about research. I know I've posted opportunities on the Europe website through the years. I'm realizing I haven't updated that for a while. But usually, with that first appointment, I really like to hear some about the students' own interests. And, we certainly appreciate that. For many undergraduates, you haven't had a chance to really get a sense of, oh, I want to study this. But, have a conversation, say, what, do you really like interests related to children's health? Are you really interested in the care of older adults? Are you interested in rural health? And I think for at least the students who we work with in the College of Nursing, if you can come with an attitude of, what, you're interested in learning, you'll have a great experience. And I think sometimes in our initial advising, we'll also say in some ways, even if we can't make a precise match, I mean, let's say someone was just really interested in newborn, the experience of parents of infants in the newborn ICU and what helped them be ready to go home from the hospital. Well, I may not have someone who I can match with that particular question, but maybe I have someone else who is working on research related to readiness to go home from the hospital, or some other aspect of infant health. And I think if students are willing to be flexible, to be mentorable, and be receptive to working with a senior faculty member, they'll have a great experience, because I think in our area, we really, really try to be thoughtful about not just the match of the question, but also an advisor who's going to be very supportive of a student and make sure that that student has a positive experience doing whatever research related activities. So I think, if you're scheduling a meeting with me, what I think some of the things that are going to impress me is just a willingness to learn, be open to other ideas, and just it's okay to say, what, if you're really passionate about a given area, let us know that. I think in the College of Nursing, a lot of our questions and our research involves work with human subjects. So that means that part of what you'll do before you start working on a project is complete online training related to working with human subjects. They're online modules. We get you set up to do that. But in some ways, that gives me a little bit of an idea of who's invested in really getting research experiences or not, because if I give you the instructions and we work through how to do these online modules, and then 3, 4, 5 months go by and I haven't heard back, well, maybe that student wasn't as interested after all. And we do follow up as well. I think sometimes at least in the work that I do, because if I'm in a phase of research where I'm collecting data, that's happening in a clinic setting, and the nature of my work is that when the patients are there, I drop what I'm doing and make sure I'm there. I also recognize that doesn't always work with an undergraduate student's schedule, but we can still create meaningful research experiences for our undergraduate students. I'll say I just recently published a paper that included 3 undergraduate student authors on it, and they had contributed through what we call cleaning data as far as preparing it for analysis. And 2 of them had worked very closely on learning an online platform for analyzing qualitative data. So they still got to be very immersed in the project. They got very familiar with the words of these children undergoing cancer treatment, and kind of felt by the time it was all over that they'd had a type of connection with them. So
Great.
anything else, Annie?
Oh, no, that was, you already started to answer the next question, actually. Thank you for that. Really wonderful stuff. And just in case if folks didn't see in the early connections and getting started, Shelley has put in a link out to the OUR, the Office of Undergraduate Research Opportunity Database. That's where these opportunities our colleagues were talking about, as well as how to find a mentor. There's some templates of email communications if you just want to see some samples, as well as our mentor database. So where you can find these fine folks who are doing wonderful mentoring. So we're now going to go ahead and talk about, okay, you have found the mentor. Now what happens? So doing the research part. So how do students work with you? What are the different facets of research, from data collection and dissemination? What kinds of skills are you mentoring students to develop? And so we'll go in the order. We'll start with Dr. Ramachandran.
Okay. So when I work with students on a research project, that, like I mentioned earlier, I try to understand what kind of project the students are interested in. And there's 3 primary types of projects that I have worked on and my colleagues in my department are very familiar with. So a lot of the students that come to us end up choosing one of these broad categories. So the first one is empirical research, which obviously involves hypotheses, some sort of theory building, and some testing, right? So you need to actually have data for that. And in the business school, primarily we use secondary data, which I talked about earlier, but that's not to say some folks don't go actually collect, data for the project, which is primary data collection. So in marketing, for instance, if that's an interest and you want to understand consumer behavior, somebody mentioned psychology before, sociology, right? These are disciplines that business researchers tend to draw from in understanding behaviors that might emerge due to new stimuli and so on. That kind of research can be done in a lab setting. So we also develop software that helps us collect information about how consumers react. So empirical research, if you are collecting data, can take time. This is not something you can do in 3 months or 6 months, right? Because data collection takes time. Finding the right data sources takes time. And then being able to clean and aggregate all of that data takes time. So this kind of research, empirical research, will take a substantial amount of time to get all of the data in place. So that's the first kind of research. And obviously, once you have the data, you have to learn techniques to analyze this data. And this is where statistics comes in, or machine learning, or data mining, or a lot of these new age, LLM kinds of tools and so on, right? So there's a lot of techniques to learn. Broadly, we can call them as analytical tools or analytics, right? So you'll spend the second half of your research journey learning those techniques, learning those methods. And a lot of times that involves a little bit of programming. It also involves some math, not too difficult, business math is not too difficult, but if you are a numbers person, it does help when you're dealing with data. So that's the first kind of research. The second kind of research, I'll just call it qualitative, which is where you're really putting on a thinking hat and you're thinking about a business problem or an economics problem, and you're trying to understand what is the current status quo, what's the situation now, what are the issues that people are facing, what are the issues that they have not addressed and need to be addressed, and then you come up with a framework. You develop a framework for a solution. So this is where you're really a thinker, you're a great theory builder. You try to come up with a theory of why your logic will work, and then you make a proposal, right? So this kind of research can also involve policy analysis. Should there be taxation? Should we increase taxes? Should we lower taxes? And you're sort of predicting what would happen if these stimuli are changed, these incentives are changed. So this is a lot of thinking. So you're not really playing with numbers, you're not collecting data, but you're observing scenarios, you're observing cases, you're observing different settings, and then you're coming up with your understanding of what's going on, and you make recommendations. That's one kind of research. And then one other one that's really popular in the business school is analytical modeling, which, if you've heard of game theory, that's what this is. So this is the most mathematical kind of research that you can do. And this involves writing equations to depict a scenario, to depict an agent who's playing a game in a scenario. And when I say a game, everything is a game in this world, right? Because any business situation you take, there's agents that are playing, and everybody wants to increase their utility. Everybody wants to be happier. Everyone wants to get more value out of their interactions. If it's a business, they want to make more profits. If it's a consumer, you want more satisfaction. You buy a product, you're going to pick the best product that's cheap and really good, right? Because that's what gives you the best value. So you write equations to depict all of these scenarios, and then you solve these equations, right? So this is the most mathematical. So this definitely requires a little more training, specialized training. So there are definitely students who get interested in that and will dedicate a lot of time to learning the techniques that you need to answer those kind of questions. So these are the three that I've seen very commonly. And then one more I'll mention is because I'm from the Operations and Information Systems group, which is sort of the closest to computer science in the business school. We're interested in the applications of technology. That's how we differ from computer science. So one thing that I've seen students want to do is also build artifacts. Like, for instance, you want to build an AI tool to understand how LLMs can be applied to a particular business problem. Maybe you want to develop a mobile application. So this involves programming. This involves learning stacks to understand how to build these artifacts. That's another popular kind of undergraduate research that students undertake as well.
Thank you. We'll go on to Dr. Steffen. Dr. Steffen.
Yeah, so students who work with me do a lot of things. So typically when they first start, I'll teach them a bunch of techniques and the contexts for applying those techniques generally. I really want students to figure out what they like and be successful in applying those skills. And so for me, that looks like, it could be going out and doing sampling outside. It could be sequencing DNA in lab, but broadly expose them to a bunch of approaches for collecting data. And then some of our other panelists talked about this. A key thing is, for me, is that the research I do, and in general, never works the way you think it's going to. And so how, as a researcher, do you address these questions when it's not as clean as you might think? The answers are ambiguous, and how do you interpret those? And a lot of that is math, to the disappointment of some of my students. So how do you employ these disciplines that you're engaged in apart from kind of like if I say I'm a plant biologist, few students think they're to come in and do a bunch of statistics. And so both collecting data and then interpreting that and then designing the next experiment. And so once I go through those cycles with students, then I figure out what their questions are. And that's the most fun for me, to have them come up with new ideas that I haven't thought about and help them employ those. And so in terms of dissemination, there's lots of ways I try to help students engage in professional activities. Each discipline is slightly different how they do this. In my fields, it can be poster presentations, it can be going to conferences, it can be publications, it can be all kinds of things. And so making sure they have opportunities to do that. And really one of the most important things I want students to leave to gain is to figure out what they enjoy and how to take the next steps. So apart from all of the skills, the scientific skills, the research skills, figuring out how do they translate that into a path that they're going to enjoy. And so like, if you don't really like doing microscopy, that's fine. Let's find something you do like and you can be successful at, and figure out how you can do that. And that's one of my priorities. In addition to like helping me answer the questions I want to answer. So that's a real conversation, and how to have students collaborate effectively and feel like they belong in a space doing these things. So those are some of the things I work on with my students.
Thank you. Dr. Kamimura.
So in my project, all projects are team-based. That is because normally the health research is team-based. I occasionally accept a student who wants to do the individual project. That is totally fine, but I see that unless the student is super motivated and already have some skills, I think a team-based approach works better for my project. So I normally do the primary data collection, maybe the survey or qualitative the data collection like interviews or focus groups. I have done a secondary data analysis with the students, but right now all of my projects involve the primary data collection. And if students start working for my projects or develop their own projects early enough, they start working on questionnaire development or like interview guide development and what would be the theory behind. Some students jump in a project later time. They may miss the first part, but otherwise, I want the students to do the questionnaire development, interview guide development, so that they can be learn how to develop the project. And data collection is the part that most students really like primary data collection. So I think they really enjoy it. When the group of the students is bigger, usually there is one or two students who want to take leadership. So I think that they work together very well. In terms of analysis, the quantitative data analysis, statistical analysis is a little bit harder because not all students have taken the statistics course already. But for the qualitative data analysis, normally I give them the training and they do very well. And also the dissemination, the students really like poster presentation. When I ask them if they want to make poster and present, usually they said yes. Then they made the poster and they presented at the conference or symposium. For the paper, the manuscript, I think that some students are very interested in it, other students not very interested in it. I think I should guide the students better to let them know the dissemination through the manuscript. The paper is very important to reach out to wider audience, because if people don't know about their research, their contribution to the field and the practice is very limited.
Thank you. And Dr. Linder.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know that I have a lot to add to what the others have presented already. I think with the students I've worked with over the years, most of their contributions have been after the primary data collection has been complete, and which I think, at least with the work that I do, helps align with the time that the students are able to give. Again, I think with our nursing students, a lot of times they're very involved in their clinical rotations, their classroom, so their schedules don't always permit being available to be engaged in primary data collection, but that doesn't mean that we can't find a way for them to engage in the project and have a meaningful connection with that project. So sometimes it's learning to clean data sets. I've had students help with transcribing interviews, but then, some of that transcribing interviews isn't always the most fun work, but then analyzing those transcripts is. And I've had students do a fair bit of work with those analyses. We've also really worked to engage students in the dissemination aspects. So a number of our students are presenting posters. I think anyone who's involved with Europe or in honors will present a poster of the work that they do at the Undergraduate Research Symposium. I really enjoy the opportunity to work with students even earlier in their undergraduate studies, because that really sets them up for some of these things that I think about as bonus to just completing the minimum for that Europe project. So last month I had one current undergraduate and one former undergraduate student involved in presenting oral presentations at a professional meeting. Again, I referenced a couple of students, or rather 3, who had worked with me on a given project, each with different facets of that project, be included as co-authors on a paper that was published. So I think I'm also very happy to personalize research opportunities to fit the schedule of the student. And I don't ever want a student to feel bad, well, I couldn't give this much time or whatever. I think regardless of the time that you have to give, I'm happy to work to create a meaningful experience in research that will support your learning needs.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. We're gonna, because we are running short on time, and there was another question of supports. How do, who supports undergraduate students in research? What are those support systems? Well, I hope you've all been hearing your professors are really huge advocates of you, as well as Shelley's going to put in the chat the Office of Undergraduate Research that we have research advising. This does not replace your faculty mentors and their research teams. You've heard that there's teams, some work in teams, some you're in a team of one doing a research as one, but we highly encourage faculty mentors support you and that it all looks different. And our colleagues made reference to Range Journal publishing as well as presentations. Shelley's also going to drop into the chat the opportunities to present at the Undergraduate Research Symposium and also to publish in Range, the Undergraduate Research Journal that is edited by myself, Sarah Cody, who's a staff editor, as well as our student editor Kashan Tambu. But we want to round this up in the last 6 minutes we have. So you each have 1 minute. So we encourage, to be very concise. It's the joy of research. We know you have many joys to talk about, but tell us one success story. What is an example of a proud mentor moment? We're going to go in the order of Dr. Kamimura, Dr. Steffen, Dr. Linder, then Dr. Ramachandran.
So I want to talk about Dr. Naveen Rashi. He was in my class about 10 years ago. He was a freshman here. And he started research, mostly the community health with me as an undergraduate student. After that, he went to the medical school here. And now that he is a resident physician in Ohio. And actually, he has been continuing working with me. I actually met him in person right before the fall break to talk about the research project. So this is, of course, he went to the medical school and now he's a physician. It's a success story. But other than that, I'm very glad he's still interested in community health. And he really wants, he is a cardiologist, but he really wants to continue research and also with me. I'm sure that he's doing research with other people too. But so I think it's really continuous. I think this is a great success story. Sorry, I'm taking too much time.
Thank you. That's very exciting, Dr. Steffen.
So I really like seeing when students I work with graduate and what they end up doing. So a student I worked with as a first-year student in science class, like microbiology project, ended up changing her major and just got into a graduate program in the philosophy of science. And it was really neat to see how she made those transitions. So I was really excited to see that.
Wonderful. Dr. Linder.
Yeah, I'll just share an experience from just a month ago as one of my students gave an oral presentation of her undergraduate research at a national meeting. It happened to be held here in Salt Lake City, so it made it easier for her to attend. But I think you just kind of get those proud moments of seeing your mentees present their work confidently. And then it's also just a nice privilege when you have colleagues who are national experts in their own right in the audience who take the time to ask thoughtful questions, not in an outright mean or challenging way, but ask a question that lets the student answer in a way that really lets her shine with the work that she did.
Wonderful. Dr. Ramachandran.
So hard to pick one, but several years ago, I had a student who was a first generation college student, like first time from her family. And she always doubted whether she was good enough to study technology and programming and be one of those, women science coders. And she doubted herself a lot, but she completed an undergraduate research project. She worked with me through Europe, and she was a business major, but not a major in my field. But she learned programming, and for her project, she actually developed a mobile app, which was then used by a lot of students that she knew. It was a health-based mobile app, which was amazing just to see her progress from all of that uncertainty and doubt, and not knowing if she'd be able to do it, and then in 2 years be able to complete that project. I think that was a wonderful moment. And of course, she landed a job in technology. So she never thought she'd be able to do that. So I was really proud of that moment for her.
That's wonderful. So it sounds like the winning stories are from graduate school to industry. You do something wonderful. It sounds like really exciting things that are happening for our students who are mentored by our colleagues who you had a chance to meet. I do want to say that, if you are an undergraduate research, Europe, Wilkes, or Early Explorer, please fill out the event evaluation. This is a little bit more about the Office of Undergraduate Research if you want to connect with us. But we only have 1 minute left. And so if folks want to just stay on for a minute to ask a question, we can open it up to questions. You can either chat or you can just unmute yourself.
Thank you. So yeah, my name's Joshua. My question was for Dr. Steffen. So when you talked about kind of the differences of research between different colleges or departments, what are some of the biggest differences that you've noticed, and what would you recommend to somebody who's trying to acclimate to a specific college's style of research? Obviously, like UROPs with professors or mentors in those fields, but anything else if you're maybe a step back from that, like you haven't been able to connect with so my degree is going to be in psychology, but I'm working with a professor who's out of the College of Nursing. So
yeah, so your question's about how do you figure out what the research is going to be like, or how do you
right, and how do
adjust
you
to those?
right, like what would be things that
Yeah.
a person could kind of look up, dig up, so that if they were to swing over to then working under a mentor in the College of Psychology, they might have a leg up or like kind of a foot forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of the students I work with are drawn to the topics of a research project, which is really interesting. I think the thing I recommend to students is think about what the research entails. So I think a clear example for me, and this probably doesn't apply, but if I say I'm a plant biologist, a lot of people think that means you're going to go outside and look at plants. What I do in lab is pipette and move liquids around, and it's very similar to like what a cancer biologist would do. So I think one of the things I'd suggest when you're thinking about getting involved in research is, and you can ask these questions of the folks you're interested in. So like, I'm really interested in your research questions. What are some of the skills, or what are some of the things I'd be doing? Is it, it could be programming, it could be literature reviews. And I think understanding some of those things and what you enjoy is really helpful in making those experiences better for both you and the mentor. So there's not a misalignment, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a great question. All right. Well, I want to say to my colleagues, you're rockstar mentors. Thank you so much for this. We know that in a given year, we have about 4,300 students who watch our education series events. So we know lots of folks are going to be checking this out afterwards as well. And so we just want to thank you for sharing your nuggets of information with this captive audience. And we just want to wish you all a good rest of your day. And for joining thank you all for joining the education series. You all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you all.